It's a big week for spring football. All three schools behind us have their spring games this week. Let's talk about Florida first, since the orange and blue game is set for on Thursday night. Frank, there are a lot of questions as we head into Billy Napier's second year. Big ones at quarterback. So what are the things that you'll kind of be watching when they hit the field on Thursday?
I think the most important thing, everyone wants to watch the quarterback because nobody's ever seen Graham Mertz, the transfer from Wisconsin, who's probably going to win the job. Jack Miller, the transfer from Ohio State's in it, but I think Mertz is going to be the quarterback. We haven't seen him. So this is the first time, other than going on YouTube and watching Wisconsin highlights, that anybody can see him. So I think everybody's going to watch Mertz. But I think what I'll look for, Jamal, is do they look more athletic? When you watch that spring game last year, those receivers and defensive backs didn't look like the ones playing at Georgia and Alabama and Clemson. They're recruiting more guys like that. Do they look faster? Do they look quicker? Are their first steps better? I think that's what I'm going to try and see if you can. It's hard to tell how good your team is because you're playing yourself, but I'll look and see if there's maybe more athleticism.
All right, on the other end of the spectrum, Florida State and Georgia both hit the field on Saturday for their spring games. Let's start with Georgia, since they're the other team with quarterback questions. One of the guys that's competing for that spot knows Jacksonville pretty well, played his high school football over at Mandarin, Carson Beck. We'll be keeping an eye on that. But with Stetson Bennett kind of moving on, the mailman did a lot for that Bulldogs program with their back-to-back championship runs. Now Kirby Smart has to find a way to figure out who his next signal caller will be.
Well, there's some stories at play there. Number one, quarterback at Georgia is all the rage. Is Carson Beck, who's been waiting his turn, going to be the quarterback? And that's the storyline. Remember now, Todd Monken, a one-time Jaguars assistant, was the offensive coordinator the last 2 years. He called the plays for Stetson Bennett, but he loved Carson Beck. He couldn't wait to play Carson Beck. Well, he left. He's with the Ravens now. Mike Bobo, a former Georgia quarterback, is back calling the plays. He is typically liked running quarterbacks a little bit more. Now, does that hurt Carson Beck? We will see. But I think how Bobo and Carson Beck work together. Look, that team's loaded. They might win the doggone thing again. They have the best athletes in college football, but the question is quarterback. You're right. That's a big question at Georgia.
All right, now the one of the three schools that we are going to talk about that actually knows who their quarterback is, Florida State. Jordan Travis coming back for his final year in Tallahassee with the Seminoles. High expectations for this guy. He's a guy that's expected to be in the Heisman conversation as they get ready for the fall. The Seminoles are another team that are expected to make a run. The question as they go into another year with Mike Norvell is, can they build off what they were able to do last year? What do you need to see from them in their spring game?
Well, you hit it. Can you build off it? I think the job Mike Norvell did in getting everybody to come back is one of the great stories in college football that we'll be talking about when we get to college football season. Jared Verse would have been a first-round pick. Johnny Wilson would have gone high. Jordan Travis would have been drafted. They all came back to try and do it one more time. An amazing recruiting job of his own roster by Mike Norvell, which was fantastic. The question is, can they do it with expectations? Nobody expected anything from that team last year, and they kind of snuck up on people. You think, well, how does FSU sneak up on everybody? They're FSU. But I think they kind of did. The question now is, with everybody expecting them to be good, how good will they be? I like the Noles, though. I think the Noles have a really special team. I really do.
All right, now as we go into these spring games, I know that what you see on the field this time of year is important, but can we how do you have to kind of mitigate your expectations of what you see in the orange and blue game or that garnet and gold game, but it's not the fall, it's not the final finished product?
No, that's right. You can never tell how good you are when you're playing yourself, and that's what happens in these spring games, but you want to look for a player to look good. I think, for me, in Florida and at Georgia, I think it's all about the quarterbacks because you don't know who the quarterback's going to be, so you can see if the guy's comfortable, if he checks to a second receiver. At FSU, don't get anybody hurt. I think Florida State's going to play a lot of young guys. I think Jordan Travis and Johnny Wilson and Jared Verse aren't going to play very much, and I wouldn't play him very much. That team's ready to go. Georgia and Florida have to find their quarterbacks, and that's what everybody's watching.
All right, we'll keep an eye on all three of these games this week. Again, the orange and blue game set for Thursday, garnet and gold game and G-Day both on Saturday. We'll have coverage of all three games right here on Channel 4. Thanks, Frank, for being here.